What's up, basketball fans? Welcome to the Warriors Report. We got some news this Saturday morning that the Toronto Raptors are interested in Bojan Bogdanovic. Now, this should not come as a surprise because we know the Utah Jazz have placed several veterans on the trading block. And in fact, I made a video about several days ago talking about several players, including Jordan Clarkson and Bojan Bogdanovic. And of course, a few other names I mentioned were Mike Conley and Malik Beasley as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Raptors are linked to those players as well in the coming days. But for today's video, I'm going to be discussing some of the positives about trading for Bojan Bogdanovic. I'm going to talk about how he would impact the Toronto Raptors, how he could help the Toronto Raptors. I'm also going to talk about some of the negatives as well and why maybe the Raptors should not trade or consider trading for someone like a Bojan Bogdanovic. So if you're ready to watch today's video, guys, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Let's try to get this video to 130 likes. And if you would like to join a YouTube channel, which is very supportive of each other, we got a fun community here that's supportive of each other, even though we have a difference of opinions, and a YouTuber who actually likes to read your comments, but also reply to them as well. This is the channel for you. So make sure to hit the subscribe button as well. So with that being said, let's get into today's video. Now, as you guys know, I do like to give out shout outs on my channel. And for today's video, the shout out goes out to Todd Stevens. So Todd, thank you so much for supporting this channel through your likes and comments. It is very much appreciated. Now let's talk about Bojan Bogdanovic, who is listed at 6'7". So yes, he fits in with our large lineup, if you want to call it. He's a bench player who's obviously what I like to call a professional scorer. Now, I know that sounds weird because they're all professionals. You don't just make it to the NBA without, being a really good professional. But what I mean by Bojan Bogdanovic when I call him a professional scorer is you can essentially place him on any team around the NBA, and without a doubt, he would fit in seamlessly. He would come off the bench, provide some really good scoring, and just be a really good veteran piece, which I think he could be for the Toronto Raptors. In fact, I wanted to talk about some stats here because, as you guys know, this channel is all about the stats. On taking a look at the Utah Jazz and how they performed with him on the court and without him off the court. Now, obviously, there's some questions about Bojan's defense as well, but when you take a look at several seasons with the Utah Jazz and even the Indiana Pacers, with him on the court last season, the Utah Jazz were a plus 4.8, but when he was off the court, they were minus 2.8. And again, even the previous season, a plus 9.2 is absolutely ridiculous for a bench player. But when he is off the court, they were minus 0.9. Now, I know you can look at some of the previous seasons like 2019, 2020, where they were actually better with him off the court. But I think with the Raptors system, especially one where you have Nick Nurse, who it seems like he just seamlessly inserts guys and has them playing really good defense and overall just really good team ball as well. Bojan could be someone that could come in, be instantly our sixth man off of the bench. He can provide some really good scoring. He's a very well capable scorer. I don't think I need to highlight his stats because he's had such good seasons with the Indiana Pacers and the Utah Jazz, and as well as several other teams as well, where he's averaged 15 plus points a game. So he can come in as a sixth man. You can play him with these starters. You can play him at the small forward position. We do have a lot of power forward, so I think small forward would probably be the best position to play him. He can come in. He's not really known for his passing, but he's a high IQ veteran player that can come in and make the right passes. And in fact, the most important thing I think for the Toronto Raptors, if they were to acquire someone like Bojan Bogdanovic, is the fact that he can create his own shot. That is such a big asset in today's NBA, especially for bench players. Like you take a look at the Raptors bench, they have some really good pieces in Chris Boucher. Obviously, we know Precious Achiuwa is developing and getting better. And then you have Thaddeus Young as well as Otto Porter Jr. But out of those four guys, who can you legitimately say can create a shot for themselves? With all due respect to Chris Boucher, I don't think that's him. He usually just gets guys on pump fakes, and Precious Achiuwa, although he tries his best with his speed because he can blow by bigger men, I don't think he's there yet as well. So in inquiring someone like Bojan Bogdanovic, you can come in, have someone that can really, even though he's not a point guard, he can handle the ball several times. He can create shots for others. He draws a lot of attention on offense, which will create a lot of open looks for other guys as well. So I think having him on the roster will have such benefits for the Toronto Raptors. And take into consideration, again, I know there's a lot of questions regarding his defense as well, but take into consideration that the last 5 seasons with the Utah Jazz and the Indiana Pacers, he's averaged about 5 win shares per season. In fact, there's one season where he had 6 with the Indiana Pacers. So he could be someone that could truly impact the Toronto Raptors, not only in bench scoring because they desperately need some help off of the bench, even though their bench has progressed a lot and it looks a lot better than last season, He can come in and be a really good scorer for the Toronto Raptors, but also just someone that can generate offense, someone you can play with the starters as well. So I mean, there's several things to take into consideration there, and also he's a good three-point shooter, which the Raptors could always use off of the bench as well. But with that being said, we do have to talk about some negatives as well, guys. Now, for all of the positives we talked about Bojan Bogdanovic, there definitely are a few negatives we have to talk about as well. The fact that he's 33 years old, and he's also a free agent next season, so he has 1 year left on his contract. And what do you give up for him? It's difficult. So for someone that makes about 19 somewhat $million, where do the Raptors potentially find the pieces to acquire that? Because the salaries do have to match. If the Raptors were really interested, they would very likely have to include a third team in that. But again, taking into consideration, he's got 1 year left on his contract and he's making $19 million. Where does that money come from? Obviously, there's a few pieces you can throw in there. Khem Birch in particular makes about $6 million, but even with Khem Birch, that's still missing about $13 million. So it's very likely you'd have to include a third team. One team I could potentially see being involved in a three-team deal could be the LA Lakers, who has also been linked to a lot of the Jazz's veteran players like Mike Conley. So maybe the Jazz decide, you know what, maybe they can acquire a couple of second-round picks from the Toronto Raptors and a first-round pick from the Lakers and Russell Westbrook. Maybe the salaries match. I know Russell Westbrook makes $30-somewhat million. Maybe the Utah Jazz send the $19 million their way. But again, you really have to question, why would the Lakers do that? Are they receiving Khem Birch? What are they potentially receiving from the Raptors again? So again, you can take a look at it from both sides, right? Obviously he would impact the Raptors greatly. He's a great bench piece. But at the same time, how do you trade for him? And three-way teams aren't necessarily as easy as we may suggest. This is not just NBA 2K where you pop three teams, the salaries match, and every team agrees to it. There's so many variables to take into consideration. So that's just a difficult situation acquiring someone like a Bojan Bogdanovic, and how much are the Raptors willing to give up? But do take into consideration, guys, before we say yes and no, or wherever we decide to make up our mind, is anytime you trade for a bench piece, it's not easy. Take into consideration that we had to give up a first-round pick. I know we technically got an early second-round pick for Thaddeus Young, but that was just Thaddeus Young, who, by the way, that was on a losing team like the San Antonio Spurs, and Thaddeus Young had pretty much not played the entire season with the Spurs, and despite that, they were still able to get a first-round pick for him. So it's not always easy to score or easy to acquire bench pieces, and it's a little bit of a challenge. Forget the salaries for a second. Usually, these kind of deals happen at the NBA trade deadline, so although many people may disagree that his defense definitely isn't on to par with what the Raptors may expect from their small forward or even any of their bench pieces, take into consideration that even when you're trading for guys like Bojan at the NBA trade deadline, there's several factors to take into consideration where a lot of teams are giving up first-round picks. So if the Raptors do really feel strongly about him and they do want to trade him, you trade for him now and then you have him the entire season and potentially re-sign him for cheaper in the offseason next season, who, by the way, the salary cap is going up about $10 million. But this is going to be very interesting, but also some factors to take into consideration before we end this video off, guys. I did forget to mention that the person reporting this is Jake Fischer. So yes, trigger warning for everyone, but obviously it's the offseason. I could see the Raptors being interested, not necessarily maybe getting a deal done there, but definitely being interested in acquiring Bojan Bogdanovic, and also taking into consideration that the Utah Jazz, there's an article that came out yesterday suggesting that they wanted first-round picks for guys like Bojan, Jordan Clarkson, and even Malik Beasley. So again, we'll see, right? Do the Raptors necessarily want to give up a first-round pick? And even if they do, where does the money come from for the $19 million that Bojan makes? It's a little bit of a challenge. So let's be realistic. So realistically speaking, I don't see a deal getting done there. If the Raptors do somehow find a way to acquire Bojan Bogdanovic without giving up too much, I think it's a very good deal for the Toronto Raptors. And again, like I mentioned, he had a win share over the last 5 seasons of an average win share about 5 wins added to a team. Taking into consideration how tight the Eastern Conference was last season, the Toronto Raptors, Philadelphia 76ers, and Milwaukee Bucks, and even at times during the late last season, Boston Celtics were all within a few wins of each other. So that 5 wins comes into a huge impact late in the season when it comes to playoff seeding. So again, those are just my points. I would love to have Bojan Bogdanovic on the Toronto Raptors. I think as I mentioned, he's a professional scorer. You can put him on any team and he plays so well. You can provide some scoring, some veteran leadership. And he can also provide some scoring and three-point shooting as well, which is so huge. And he can create his own shot. But on the negative, he makes a lot of money. What are the Raptors going to give up? Would they give up potentially someone like a Thaddeus Young, right? I don't think they'll trade Chris Boucher because He just signed a contract, and like you guys mentioned, he can't be traded for a while. But do the Raptors trade someone like a Thaddeus Young? I don't know. Thaddeus Young is a Raptors culture guy. He helps a lot of the young guys. So realistically speaking, I don't see a deal getting done there unless it's a 3-team deal and somehow the Raptors find a way to sneak themselves into it. So again, I don't see it happening, but I do want to hear your thoughts. What do you think of these rumors? What do you think the Raptors could potentially acquire Bojan for? What would you give up for him in a trade? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And as always, guys, I do have a trivia question for you today. And that trivia question is, which of these players were drafted by the Toronto Raptors in the first round? Was it A, Kareem Rush? Was it B, Lamont Van Der Heer? Was it C, DeAndre Hewlett? Was it D, Albert Morales? So whoever answers this trivia question correctly first in the comment section gets a shout out in my next video. So that will be it for today's video, guys. So thank you so much for watching this channel, and I hope you guys have yourselves a great day.